Well, welcome to Christ and Culture. This is Pastor Jeff Short, your Bible teacher and cultural analyst. Today we're going to be following up on a story about Dr. Michael Brown, the apologist, scholar, messianic evangelist, and church pastor and church leader. Michael Brown has been involved in a scandal that involved a couple women about 20-some years ago. And finally, we have the report that has been promised to the public by a group called Firefly. Both the people complaining about Michael Brown and Michael Brown's organization, the Line of Fire, agreed that this group could conduct an unbiased investigation, and they did. So here are the results. It says that this is reported now by Julie Royce and the Royce Report. And so here is the summary of this, I think it was 85-page report. It says Michael Brown engaged in sexually abusive misconduct, the report says. So I'll talk more about that later, but sexually abusive misconduct, that's quite a string of words. And it's not really clear what it actually means, even though it sounds really, really bad. It sounds like the connotations of the words sound like he was involved in a sexual affair and sexual abuse and a sexual misconduct. It sounds like he committed sexual abuse. It sounds like he was involved in a abusive relationship. It sounds like he was involved in sex. And it sounds like he had been involved in all kinds of misconduct and all kinds of things. But let's go into the report, and then at the end I'll talk about that phrase, sexual abusive misconduct, because it's somewhat misleading until you understand what it is that Michael Brown actually did. Here is Michael Brown himself at his Line of Fire broadcast desk. And let's get into the report summary. It says, Messianic apologist Michael Brown engaged in sexually abusive misconduct with one young woman and an inappropriate relationship with a second married woman in the early 2000s, a third-party investigative report by Firefly has found. Okay, so we already knew that. We already knew about these two cases, and we already knew some of the details of these two cases. So there's nothing new here. It's exactly what Michael Brown said in his response. This is the response he's making on December 17th, 2024. He addresses recent allegations regarding past misconduct. Okay, so we already knew this. So there's nothing new here. And I was telling people to not jump the gun and not take what we know about Michael Brown and then expand on it and then speculate on it and make links to greater charges or greater misconducts than we actually know anything about. So I said, don't do that. Wait, let's see what the report says. And if it uncovers greater offenses, then we'll deal with those. And he should have to have a more severe punishment. But don't go into these flights of speculation like so many people were doing online. They were saying, oh, if he did this, well, then there's probably all kinds of women that he's been involved with, and he's done this and that. And people are just jumping on this bandwagon of expanding allegations that are totally unfounded as far as this report reveals. It says, the sexual misconduct included physical touch with Sarah Monk. Okay, we knew that. We knew that he had done these inappropriate physical touches. Not sexual, though, not in the sense of touching anything, sexual parts, or in any kind of pornographic way. We know that because that's what has already been testified by this girl. And then a 20-year-old woman who worked for Brown, the Firefly investigative report stated, Brown also appeared to engage in a calculated effort to evade accountability. Okay, this is something we also knew, and we could all see that. I reported the first time that I heard about these allegations about Dr. Michael Brown and his response. I immediately recognized that he was trying to evade accountability. There's no question about it. So again, nothing new that we've learned with this in detailed official report. It says such behavior in any form is entirely unacceptable in any setting. Exactly. That is true. Unacceptable by a minister, but in particularly within the church and ministry settings, wrote Jim Holler, Fireflies investigator. So again, nothing new. This is nothing new. Michael Brown involved himself in inappropriate relationships. Michael Brown, 70, is founder of the Concord, North Carolina ministry, The Line of Fire, formerly Ask Dr. Brown. He also led the Brownsville Revival School of Ministry and founded the Fire School of Ministry. Brown has taught thousands of students who went on to lead ministries affecting tens of millions of people, Firefly reported. Brown didn't immediately respond to the Royce report request for comment. Monk told TRR she's still processing the report, but was initially struck with how misleading Brown could be. Yes, there's no question about it that Dr. Michael Brown sought to cover up, minimize, divert, and simply explain away everything that he was doing. He was trying to avoid accountability. He was trying to avoid embarrassment. He was trying to avoid any of the negative repercussions that would come out when people found out that he was acting so foolishly and recklessly and just irresponsible. This is not becoming to a minister of the gospel. But his initial claim that there was nothing that involved sexual immorality or adultery is true. And the report actually shows that. Monk told TRR she's still processing the report. Yeah, she's looking it over and seeing if everything is the way she understands it, and that makes sense. If Mike can cover up his own sexual abusive misconduct with me, then he can cover up for other ministries. So she's now expanding the allegations of, okay, he was covering up, he was hiding, he was diverting people's attention, he was misleading people away from his own foolishness, and now she's claiming that he can do that with other ministries and other ministers who are in trouble. So he's a master of trying to manipulate the narrative and trying to get people to not have to pay the consequences for their irresponsibilities. Well, I don't know. I don't know if he did that with other ministries. Again, that's an expansion that she doesn't even know is true. But again, she's taking it based on what he did in this instance with her situation. After TRR reported allegations of sexual misconduct late December, the Line of Fire board hired Fireflies investigator Jim Holler to investigate. Holler told TRR he released the report to the LOF board, Line of Fire board, last Saturday. LOF published Firefly's report in full on a website yesterday afternoon. So they got a report, they hired this investigator, and he published a full report, and then they made that public. So that's good, very transparent. And actually, Dr. Michael Brown called for a third-party investigation. I was always baffled why didn't he just come out and say what he did and be honest and confirm what these allegations had said about him? Why didn't he just come out clean? Why did he make this into a big deal by this third-party investigative report? Why did he call for that? Why didn't he just call for his own honesty? Why didn't he call himself to honesty? It doesn't, again, I guess he just couldn't get himself to say what he actually did because he's still in that mood of deflecting, diverting attention away from himself to avoid accountability. I don't know. Firefly also found that Brown deliberately deflected questions about allegations of sexual misconduct. Yes, there's no question he was trying to downplay or minimize his involvement with these women. But again, it's two to tango. And these are adult women. They're not children. So you can't call it sexual clergy child abuse because they weren't children. These were adult women. One of them was middle-aged, and also married, so she wasn't just a naive teenager. And the other girl was in her early 20s, I think it was. And so she's actually legally an adult. So she is part of this scandal herself. She was involved in the guilt of this reckless, irresponsible, and unchristian relationship, flirting with a married man and carrying on with a married man in whatever the ways that she's accusing Brown of doing. She is also a participant in those ways. So she's not this innocent victim of Dr. Michael Brown. Neither of these women are innocent victims of Dr. Michael Brown. They're involved in this stupid misconduct, non-Christian behavior between a single woman and a married man, and a married woman and a married man. So they all knew that they shouldn't be involved in these closer relationships, and yet the report seems to treat the two women as just victims of this bad, mean Dr. Brown. He's not a bad, mean person. He's just a very foolish, reckless, irresponsible person whose reckless, irresponsible behavior has found him out. This pattern of deflection appears to be calculated effort to evade accountability, suppress the allegations, and protect his ministry's reputation, Firefly stated. Exactly. And that's what I was saying before in some of the other videos that I have done concerning Michael Brown. There's no question about it. He is an apologist defending Christianity. He's used to using arguments. He's used to marshaling evidence. He used his lawyerly defense skills in this instance to actually try to defend the indefensible. The indefensible is his misconduct, his irresponsible, foolish behavior with these women who were not his wife. And so he used his own God-given skills that have helped him become a great defender of the Christianity to defend himself in an indefensible position. He needed to just come out and say, I am guilty. I did these things. I should be accountable. I have to pay the price, whatever that price is. I don't know. But I did them. And I'm not going to use my debate skills and diversion defense skills to try to prove I'm innocent, because I know I'm guilty. I'm guilty because I did these things. Firefly's report confirms TRR's reporting on allegations that Brown swatted his secretary's butt, kissed her and held her hand, and allowed her to sit in his lap. Okay, so those are the misconduct with this younger woman. Again, it's not full-blown sexual immorality. It's not even romantic kissing or inappropriate touching of female body parts. It's just this stupid, sloppy, careless, irresponsible, foolish casualness, actually, that he needs to repent of. I mean, those are unbecoming of a married man in the first place, but then also it compounds it because he's a leader of a Christian movement, and he preaches holiness, and he actually, at the school, the Fire School of Ministry in which he led, he actually taught the students to be very strict in their contacts with members of the opposite sex, so that to avoid scandal and to avoid immorality and so on and so forth. And yet he's doing this kind of stupid, foolish, casual, well, kissed her on the lips, held her hand, allowed her to sit on his lap, swatting her on the butt. Those are really sophomoric, college age kind of shenanigans that, in one sense, they're kind of harmless, but coming from a married man in a ministry position of responsibility, no, they're inappropriate. That's the word that just keeps on coming to the top of mind, inappropriate. Firefly also confirmed TRR's reporting that Brown's engaged in an inappropriate relationship with a now deceased congregant from a church he pastored during the Browns' revival. The relationship included sexually related communications, the report said. Yes. So, in other words, the report confirmed that what others had suggested were he was talking dirty with a married woman over the phone, or talking dirty with a married woman over email messages. Again, this is so sophomoric, immature, carnal, worldly. This is the kind of things that the non-Christian world does, casually, in fact. Commonly, it's done. But we require higher standards of Christians, and especially Christian leaders. And so he knows this, okay? So that's why he was trying to cover it up, because he's ashamed of himself for doing this kind of foolish thing. But that does not justify him trying to mislead people and trying to cover up and divert them so that he wouldn't be embarrassed. Well, he needs to pay the price. He needs to eat humble pie and realize, hey, this is exposed. I've been caught. I need to come clean and be honest with people. Honesty, again, is another Christian characteristic. We tell the truth. These actions not only betray the confidence placed in these roles, but also inflict significant harm on individuals and communities, eroding the trust essential for fostering spiritual guidance and support, Firefly stated. Exactly. So that's basically saying, when a minister of the gospel and a Christian leader conducts himself in these stupid, foolish ways, crossing boundaries here and there like they aren't boundaries he taught are important to follow and stay on your side of the fence. He then flagrantly violates those boundaries, and now hypocritically, he's trying to say everything was okay, everything's great, no problem. It's not true. Firefly interviewed Brown, who denied he kissed former Secretary Sarah Monk on the lips, contradicting her testimony. So I guess he's saying that he didn't kiss her on the lips, and she claims, the young woman, that he did. So there's a point of contention here. Someone is not either remembering this correctly or is flat out lying. So I don't know. Again, I don't know who's the one that's mistaken. I don't know who's the one that's lying. But there was a discrepancy between the report and this testimony of this woman. Brown admitted to having an emotional affair and adultery of the heart with a married woman, but denied any physical touch with her. So, again, there's nothing new here. That's exactly what he said before, that he had had an emotional affair and adultery of the heart. He had fantasized, evidently, some kind of sexual relationship with this married woman. That is a sin, according to the Bible, according to Jesus Christ himself. If you look at a woman lustfully in your heart, you've already committed adultery with her in your heart. You haven't committed adultery with her physically, but you've committed adultery with her in your heart, and you need to repent of that and confess to that, and not try to explain it away, rationalize it away, and whatnot. Brown stated that they both said some sinful things to each other, and that was the most despicable thing he had ever done, Firefly reports. Okay, so that is a little bit more than we knew before. He is now admitting that he wasn't just merely writing down what this woman said about some sexual thing, like he had at first. I think he had at first tried to say, well, I just wrote that down, like it might be a counseling situation, so he was taking notes and writing down what she was telling him. No, that was him and this woman, he and this woman exchanging inappropriate conversation about the topic of sex. So, and he says now that that is one of the most despicable things he has ever done in his life. So he's guilty of having what they call phone sex or phone texting, sexting. So, yes, that is a sin. And that's totally inappropriate for a man of God. This is consistent with Brown's previous claim to TRR that the relationship had an emotional but not physical tie. So, again, just confirmation of what we knew. Firefly investigators conducted 88 interviews with witnesses and survivors, 14 of which were re-interviews, the report states. Firefly also reviewed 500 documents, some of which were emails from ministry leaders confronting Brown and Brown denying allegations. So, again, there is evidence, there's a paper trail that he was trying to lead people, mislead people, tried to divert, deflect. He was trying to obfuscate. He was trying to cover up. He was trying to minimize, rationalize what he was doing. Oh, it's okay. Yeah, there's nothing. It was just emotional. He didn't say everything that was involved. So people would come to him. I heard this. Oh, it's not the way you know. He would try to poo-poo it and dismiss it. It wasn't anything. But that was not honest. That was not completely honest. Okay. In addition to the two situations of an inappropriate relationship, the report found that Brown admonished women for their revealing dress and strict purity and dating standards at the school. So that's what I was saying before. Brown taught and preached and was influencing these young people that went to the Fire School of Ministry to be very, very strict in their purity before God in their relationships with the opposite sex. Okay? And then he goes and just totally discards that advice in his relationship with these two women of the opposite sex. Brown was affectionate with multiple female students, including a couple women he wrapped his arms around. Okay, well, that's, yeah. Hugging, in other words, yeah, that takes place in churches. That takes place between men and men and men and women, and I don't see what is so bad about that. Brown invited young women on trips with him, sometimes inviting them into his hotel room to just hang out. Again, that casualness, that kind of loosey-goosey, not thinking about, hey, I need to practice what I'm preaching. I'm talking to these students about, keeping boundaries firm, and then I just totally violate them. I don't know if he felt he was above his own preaching. He didn't feel he had to practice what he preached, or he felt he could relax the rules, I guess, when it suited him. I don't know. Brown's wife, Nancy, forbid Brown's assistant, Scott Volker, from telling anyone about the close relationship Volk noticed Brown had with the married woman. So it sounds like his wife, Nancy, was sort of covering up for him also. She didn't want the shame and embarrassment of some scandal. President of the Fire School of Ministry was acting inappropriately toward women that were not his wife, and so she was helping him cover up, enabling this cover-up. In 2002, Brown accused former fire administrator Niels Preep, who confronted Brown about Brown's handholding with Monk, of trying to bring down Brown's ministry. So, in other words, it's sort of like they got paranoid. Nancy, his wife, and Brown himself sort of got paranoid about things, and like, well, if this gets out, it could ruin my ministry, and so keep it under wraps. And it's not adultery. It's not a sexual affair. It's not anything like that. Yeah, it's not anything like that, what he said, but it is something. and it's inappropriate. It's unbecoming to a minister and a Christian leader, and he should have come clean. He should have been honest. He should have not tried to sweep it under the rug. The report stated Brown's behavior could be characterized as sexual harassment or hostile work environment. Well, I don't know. I don't know about that. Sexual harassment? That's a pretty big category. That's a pretty big category. I'm not quite sure that's appropriate, a label for Dr. Michael Brown's activity. Or hostile work environment. Well, the young woman that was involved in that that so-called hostile work environment, she didn't seem to feel it was hostile. She didn't have to be there. She didn't have to stay there. She seemed to be part of that environment, and she seemed to like it. She was getting attention from an older man. She seemed to enjoy it. I don't know. Hostile work environment? Sexual harassment? Firefly recommends better training, policies, preventive measures, and responsive protocols. But Firefly stopped short of making any recommendations about the future of Brown's ministry with LOF or elsewhere. Also, Firefly found no credible allegations of sexual misconduct after 2002. Firefly also noticed that many people came forward to share positive stories of Brown's ministry, leadership, integrity, and purity of heart in support of Brown. Of course, he's a respected Christian leader, and he preaches out of the Bible and defends the faith. The LOF board hasn't released a statement to accompany the report. Board spokesman Jonathan Bernice emailed to TRR that LOF's accountability team intends to respond next week. LOF previously stated that it has assembled an outside team of elders and leaders, including one trauma-informed counselor. I don't know what that's for. Trauma? That seems to be an overblown thing. To figure out a plan when the investigation is completed, their names will be released next week, Bernice said. Firefly has recently investigated allegations of sexual misconduct by Mike Bickle, founder of International House of Prayer, Kansas City. Yeah, Mike Bickle. That's a different case. So let's not link it to Michael Brown, which, again, online, a lot of people have said, "Oh, he knew Mike Bickle. He's doing stuff like Mike Bickle." No, different, separate case, totally different situation. And this is a report by Rebecca Hopkins, journalist based in Colorado. So nothing new. It was pretty much what we all had heard before, that it was inappropriate, but this phrase, that phrase, sexually abusive misconduct, seems to be misleading. I don't see where there was any sexual abuse taking place. These were all adults, consenting adults. They weren't having sex, but they were flirting and doing things that were inappropriate. And I don't see why he's involved in any abuse. These are people, adults, who were involved in an inappropriate relationship, and they were all participating in it. So it looks like Michael Brown is basically guilty of woeful misconduct, and there's no excuse for his activity, but I think he needs to come clean now and say, yes, this is, I acknowledge this report, and I take full responsibility for my actions. So I hope this has brought clarity, and we will see you back again next week on another edition of the broadcast. God bless.